Welcome everyone to Talking Trash. Jason Piche here. Gabe Rodriguez over there. It's okay. Rebecca's in tonight. She's filling in for Becky. Don't be confused by the fact that their names are similar. They're different people. We got some one-hot minutes that I think are going to really spur some good debate today. Yeah. And I look forward to yours, I think, maybe more than a little bit of mine. So
that's a first.
No, man. Now you're definitely going first.
Is that my Valentine's present?
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
You didn't get me flowers or chocolates or anything, huh?
You could have come to the spa with me and my girlfriend, but three's a crowd.
Yes, I hear that. So anyway, my one hot minute, I just wanted to talk about some good, some bad, and some ugly. Oh my, maybe that's your girlfriend?
Well, they're interrupting you, but let's see what they have to say. Caller, you're on Talking Trash.
Happy New Year!
Oh, Happy New Year.
Well, Happy New Year to you as well. They wanted to listen to themselves on the TV for a second. Okay. I've unplugged the phone so you can have a minute of uninterrupted time. We'll put it back in when the time has come.
So I just wanted to talk tonight about some good, bad, and ugly, and a lot of it we'll touch on later. But the good right now has to be the feel-good story of Jeremy Lin, playing so well for the New York Knicks and pretty much saved their season. Probably saved his coach's job in Mike D'Antoni. So I'm sure Linsanity's taking craze and becoming its own monster all over the NBA and all over the country, kind of like Tebow Mania did during football season. So we'll get to that later. The bad, at TCU today, there was a drug ring where 14 students were arrested, and apparently 4 of them were football players at TCU. So that'll be a big stain on that school and the program. But as the tales come, we'll see just how big this incident will be. Now the ugly, unfortunately, on a local note, a couple days ago, the New York Times reported in a story that there were 5 basketball players or students, but they keep getting referred to as only basketball players, made the pilgrimage from the Bronx, New York to attend high school at Mount St. Joseph's. And at the time, Mount St. Joseph's had a pretty bad basketball team. And last year, 4 of them were up here and they added a 5th. And since then, it's really turned the program around. And last week, I believe they beat Rutland for the first time in like 5 years, which is a big deal because Mount St. Joseph's a private school, which I guess their student body population is less than 100 right now. And they're a Division II team beating a Division I school who last year played in the state championship. So the article articulated a lot of dissension amongst the ranks in terms of the students being vilified for coming up here, that they're not really students, that they're hired assassins, but the story also alluded to some racism taking place. So if you were listening to local talk radio, they were getting a lot of feedback and opinions on this issue, whether these students are hired guns or whether they are entitled to receive an education and come from New York and matriculate to school in Vermont. So we'll probably touch on that a little later.
Well, I think we have to touch on that, Gabe. I mean, I have my own opinions on it. Personally, I don't really see much of a problem with them coming up here I mean, you would know what it's like maybe more than anybody else. I don't know what life is like for people living down in the Bronx, but I'm thinking that probably living in the rural Vermont area that they're in might be a better environment for them to grow up in than where they were. And I don't really see the problem in somebody trying to better their life if it means moving out of an area. I don't feel like other kids that go to that school that don't get playing time now should be complaining. I don't feel like anybody should be complaining. A lot of the comments that were being made that were said to be racial were all comments on, I believe, the Burlington Free Press's website by people who were reading the story and making comments. And you can't really trust a lot of those spots where people make comments online because people feel free to say whatever they want to say. But I don't think that there's as much racial stuff going on down there as that article made it seem. I think that it's a little more chill within the ranks of the school. Obviously, these kids go to the school. They don't just come and show up to play basketball and get homeschooled and then show up to play hoop. They're there. They're earning it. As long as they make the grades, they're eligible to play. It doesn't matter if they're all on the same team or if they had spread out all throughout. It's the same for any student, and I don't think that this should be an issue. But I'm curious to get your thoughts because you may be a little more connected to it.
Well, I think the way the rules are set up, like you said, any student that matriculates in that school is entitled to all the benefits, can participate in all the activities that the school has, whether it's a tennis team, chess club. This case, it happens to be basketball. So I think part of the issue is that the school is excelling now in basketball, and when they come out of nowhere and start doing well, it's going to raise some eyebrows. The racial undertones or connotations that people have is really unfortunate. I mean, the Times article basically states that, for those of you who weren't made privy to it, basically says that a coach, an AAU coach, called up the school and said, hey, would you be interested in having some students come up? They're basketball players, they live in a really bad environment, think that it would be good for them to go to school somewhere else. Vermont seems like a place that can be as far away from the Bronx, New York as possible.
Yet not that far away.
Right,
Driving
right.
wise.
But yeah, it just seems world of difference apart.
Sure.
I myself grew up in the Bronx. I mean, the Bronx is, you hear a lot of negative stereotypes, how it can be like a bad, dangerous place. The Bronx has all different kinds of areas. There's safe places, there's dangerous places, places you want to walk through at night, but they also have places where you probably would leave your door unlocked and you would feel fine. So I think that's somewhat of a moot point. I just think that these are high school students. Like you said, they're making the grades. They should be allowed to play. They should be able to enjoy all the benefits that any student has. Sure. I mean, we have a school here that's accused of recruiting and stuff all the time in Rice High School. And Rice does a great job with their student athletes academically and stuff, but since they're always on top, it seems like there's always pushback in terms of them recruiting and things like that. So I don't think it's a new issue in athletics, especially in high school, students getting recruited and things like that. It's just that the big eyesore or stain in this issue is that people are just bringing up, you know, problems involving racism.
I think it becomes a bigger issue when you talk about how this relates in a story in Vermont for two reasons. First of all, being that we're one of the whitest states in the country, so you don't see a lot of minorities, especially ones that would all of a sudden all pack onto a basketball team. All of a sudden the stereotypes start running through everybody's head, bad or good. Second of all, Vermont high school basketball is terrible. So if all of a sudden you have a couple of decent, it only takes one really good player on a high school team to have them go on an incredible run. I've seen it happen for years and years and years. But to have 5 players who have been playing at a higher level and all of a sudden come to Vermont, well, yes, it's going to be more apparent that they're dominating. If they went to a school somewhere in upstate New York and are playing against New York teams or Pennsylvania or Wisconsin or wherever else you are where the basketball might be a little bit better at the high school level, maybe this doesn't get noticed as much because people wouldn't even think about it. But because of our lack of diversity here in the state and lack of good basketball, all of a sudden it becomes, you know, this big like, wait, what all of a sudden this team is doing this good? What's going on?
Yeah.
So I think that we're a little bit a victim of that to make this an issue, but it doesn't need to be an issue.
Right.
This stuff should be happening more often. People should be able to move wherever they want, and frankly, if they're coming to Vermont, that means that there's a goodwill out there about Vermont. It's good for the state to have people coming up here, checking it out. It's good for the state because we get a little bit of diversity.
Right, I agree. I think for most part, students are at school probably from 7:30 to 3 o'clock every day. If you participate in a sport or an after-school activity, you might be there till 5 or 6. So basketball practice is only 2 hours of that day. So the students get to touch so many other students, and they're able to be in classes, and like you said, there's a lot of diversity going on there now with those 5 students being there. So there might be students who weren't friends with a black person. You have these students who might not have gone to school with a white person. So I think it just opens up so much to these students.
Sure.
So I think from both sides it could be a win-win, but it's just unfortunate that now it's kind of the story's taken like a detour or a one-way turn down a bad street.
Yeah, well, hopefully that can start to kind of go away a little bit, because I think this story coming out is going to make the community come around them a little bit. You know, there's always going to be detractors, there's always going to be haters at every level, but I think people are going to be a little lighter on this subject because we are talking about high school kids, and we're not really talking about a crime here. We're talking about kids who want to better themselves, who still show up to class every day, and if they're getting the grades and they're allowed to play, then you get to play. That's how, that's how it works.
Great. Couldn't have said it better.
All right, I'm ready for my one hot minute because I have some business to attend to with the NCAA. The Bracket Buster tournament is coming up this next weekend. Vermont will be hosting Niagara as part of that, and I want to read a statement from the Bracket Busters website, which says that the Bracket Buster tournament provides programs with an opportunity to play top non-conference opponents roughly 3 weeks before Selection Sunday. That's why this tournament was set up a long time ago. But now it has become a joke. There's 142 teams in this thing, 71 games, 16 different conferences. The America East, which is widely known as one of the worst, if not the worst overall conference, has all 9 teams in their conference in this Bracket Buster tournament. And I don't think whoever is playing Binghamton or whoever is playing Hartford is really excited about whether they win or lose that game. It's not going to help them when it comes to tournament selection time, even if their team gets hot at the last second. The whole point of this thing was, like their Bracket Buster thing says, to get some of those teams, like a Murray State, a game against somebody else that matters. And even for a team like Vermont, who might be one of the best teams in the America East, you're putting them up against Niagara, who's a team that we play on a somewhat regular basis in a conference that is comparable to the conference we're in. It's not that boost of a game that a team like a Vermont needs, or like a team like a Stony Brook from our division. Those are the teams that need the bigger games, and you're giving them average games because you have too many teams in this tournament. And I think it's because they wanted to make sure they had the right teams from all those little conferences. I'm not sure what they're doing, but they're not doing it right. And when they first set it up, it seemed like a good system to get those teams an extra tough game. Back in the day when Vermont took on Nevada, that was the kind of game that we needed. But nowadays, it just seems like this game against Niagara, I don't feel like is that big a preparation game for us. I mean, win or lose. I'm just saying it's not what we need on our resume to get us from, say, a 16 seed to a 15 seed. Right. This is not the bump we need. But that's what the Bracket Buster tournament's supposed to be about. So it's gotten out of hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think the initial reason why Bracket Buster came to fruition was they wanted to create some more quality basketball games for ESPN, but they also wanted to create matchups for teams who could not get a good RPI boost because bigger conference schools would not want to schedule them.
True.
So in the past, when, say, Vermont was really good with Taylor Coppenrath and only lost a handful of games each year, it would be hard for them to get Big East teams on the schedule. So the RPI hence was really low. So this year, the marquee matchups, Murray State against St. Mary's, 2 teams that are ranked in the top 25. It works for them.
That's
but
awesome,
like you alluded to, 142 teams. I think the pool is so large because they don't want to miss on a team. So, like, Vermont's problem was Vermont's on a roll right now. A lot to do with them being in the America East, which isn't a great conference. Where Vermont hurt themselves in terms of not receiving a better opponent was in non-league play when they went a little under 500. If they would have been able to almost run the table, which is really hard to do for a mid-major team, then they would have had one of these marquee matchups. The other thing with Bracket Busters is they take all of these teams and they only have about 8 TV games. So what they do is they'll call the 8 TV games Bracket Buster games, and then the other, say, 63 games don't get mentioned as a Bracket Buster game. The only other benefit that could be added is it helps with scheduling in terms of you're guaranteed to play your Bracket Buster team the following year, so it helps with scheduling because a lot of teams have difficulty scheduling.
Well, I just plugged it back in, Gabe, and we already got a call, so let's see what we got. Caller, you're on Talking Trash. Hello? Ah, good point. And we're unplugging the phone because of that. That's too bad. It ruined it for everybody else.
Yeah, well,
just like the people who have hate for the Rutland team.
Yeah, I mean,
sometimes like 1 or 2 people ruin it for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that is the majority speaking there. So
no, it's not. It isn't. But yeah, getting back to your point, I feel like those upper echelon games are good, and you're right. They don't want to miss out on a team. In years past, they would just select 1 or 2 teams that they thought from like the America East Conference would be the top 2 teams.
Right.
I don't see any problem with them still doing that, especially with the lower conferences. You usually, if you go ahead and pick your preseason top 10 and you go ahead and take those top 3 into your tournament, you're probably going to be good. It's been good for the America East. I know their preseason top 3 was the top 3 that there is now, so there would have been no debate over BU, Vermont, and Stony Brook being in the bracket buster. And they would stand to gain from it, whereas you have some teams, like I said, like Binghamton, they have nothing to gain. Whoever plays them has nothing to gain. Why are they in that? It's just silly. Are they going to win a game, do you think, by the way?
Ooh, I mean, they're due. They're due.
Well,
I say
can't deny them that.
I say maybe the America East tournament, they'll get their first win in that 8-9 game.
Man.
That 8-9 game. No one wants to be shut out for the season.
I'm going to miss that one.
I think they'll
this
have
year.
everything going for
I'm going to miss that one. Mark Macon may have him ready if he decides to coach that day. He's one of my favorite coaches to watch because he doesn't seem to care. It's kind of interesting.
And if you're right about that, it shows in their record.
Oh, yes. The ratio of coaching to wins is pretty spot on, as a matter of fact. Speaking of basketball, the Lady Cats are at Gutterson Fieldhouse tonight. I'm wearing my pink shirt because it's the final pink game of the season. Both the hockey teams did it. Men's basketball did it the other day against Stony Brook, despite not wearing the pink jerseys. Won't get into that, but I thought it was a bad move. Gabe's also rocking the pink here today because, you know, it's an important cause. If you got a chance and you're watching the show live tonight and you can get to the Patrick Gym to support the ladies, they will be wearing the pink jerseys tonight on the basketball court, and wish them good luck.
Yeah.
Support to the good cause. I'm hoping at some point that we'll have a set number for how much has come out from just these 4 games. It's quite a bit from what I hear.
And they also auction off the jerseys as well.
That's one of the biggest money makers for them in this thing. So it's a great cause, and get a chance to be a part of it one last time here in this season. What else you got, Gabe? We're down to about 10 minutes or so.
Can't leave the show without talking about Jeremy Lin.
I knew that you couldn't. We did mention him last week, but it was in the extra innings segment. So if you weren't watching live on Ustream, you didn't see it. But you did have a good story about when Jeremy Lin was at the Patrick Gym, and how you guys didn't have him on your scouting report, and all of a sudden he just kind of went bananas. And it seems like that's kind of what happened to the NBA. Now teams know about him. He's still doing it. Where does this guy come from? What's he about?
I mean, he's about winning, or linning, as they say. But pardon the bad puns. I'll try to keep those to a minimum. But, I mean, I think the Jeremy Lin story I think it shows more it tells more about when you get that opportunity and that chance that you're ready to take the bull by the horns, take the ball and run with it. A lot of times people get the opportunity and they're just not ready for it because they don't prepare all the time. I think what's key to Jeremy Lin is his preparation, his dedication. So when, you know, he did get that chance, he was able to take advantage. Another interesting thing about Jeremy Lin is the Knicks they were about to fire their coach. I mean, fans were not showing up to the games. Fans were not watching the games. This is the biggest ticket in town, probably most expensive ticket in the NBA. And then you have 2 superstars in Carmelo Anthony and Amari Stoudemire, who self-admittedly were not playing up to their potential. Now that the Knicks are proven that they can win minus their 2 stars, it's gonna make those 2 have to buy in and play well and buy the team concept. Because now with Carmelo and Amari, if they don't win when they get back, obviously it's their fault.
Right.
If they've proven that they can win a handful of games. It's not that they won just 1 game. They've won 5. So, and tonight they're going for 6 against Sacramento, so you would think the Knicks would have a great chance to win that game. So I think it's just really interesting. I mean, he's people equate him to Tebow, people equate him to Rudy. I think he's like on his own level because, I mean, skill-wise, where a lot of people question Tim Tebow and say what he did was fluky.
Still won the Heisman.
College, yeah. And Jeremy Lin was a good college player. Didn't win the Heisman or Player of the Year in his conference. But putting up the numbers that he's put up, a lot of people don't do that. He has the most points for anyone who started this few games in their career to this date, and that supersedes Shaq, Michael Jordan, all the greats. He has the most points for starting this few amount of games. So he not only has the victories, he also has the statistics to back him up. Where someone like Tebow just had the victories and lacked the statistics to back up his play.
I think part of what makes that story, what makes it so interesting, is that when you get a guy like Tim Tebow, or back in the day, I like to think of John Elway and the drives that he would lead, as you start to become a player, people start to think of you in a certain way, and they start to think of Tim Tebow as a winner. And so then at the end of the game, you'd kind of watch thinking, nah, he can't do it this time. And then when he does, it leaves you sitting there going, man, that just happened. And that's kind of what's happening now with Jeremy Lin, because everybody knows about him now. Right. And he didn't show this much promise very early on. So all of a sudden people are just kind of and you're just kind of waiting for somebody to lock him down and shut it down. And it's not happening. He's winning games with three-pointers at the buzzer. And it's impressive, because when the pressure gets added on, sometimes players like that can just kind of come in, they get on a little bit of a hot run. But once people notice who you are and you get to start to raise your star, people know who you are, and you'd think at some point he'd get shut down, but he's still delivering at a high level. And one of the most important things I think here is you've got the Rangers, who are in first place, the Giants just won the Super Bowl, and New York is talking about the Knicks for the first time in a long time.
I know, it's unbelievable how he's just taken New York by storm. But, I mean, New York, sports town, it's all about the now. It's not what have you done for me lately. I mean, the Giants, we're just, a week and a half off them winning the Super Bowl?
Right.
And like you said, they are back page fodder.
They sure are. They're not even front page fodder if you're reading an NFL magazine, because whatever's going on with Peyton Manning is part of that. And word came out today that he had a fourth surgery. And people are starting to wonder if this guy's even going to play again, what the deal is. I don't even know. I don't even know if I want to make any kind of prediction right now. I just feel like Manning is kind of going to come back with the Colts, because I don't feel like the Colts should cut him off. It's bad for the horseshoe to just let him walk away.
You see, I so disagree. I think they need to let him go. I also think Peyton Manning, as this is proven, isn't showing all his cards on the table. Peyton Manning knows that injury, age is what are the biggest negatives for him right now. So he has to do anything in his power to, disillusion people that those two factors are going to impede him from being a quality quarterback again. See, but if I'm the coach, you cannot commit that much money to him, especially when you have Andrew Luck. And if Andrew Luck is as good as they say, look at the success Cam Newton had, and more importantly, the success that Andy Dalton had.
I think those two guys are helping out Andrew Luck a lot.
Right.
In this, because you have a couple that are recent where you can look at and go, ooh, instead of having some Danny Werfels to look at and go,
You see, and the reason why I think Andy Dalton is a lot more important than, say, Cam Newton in these comparisons, Cam Newton's a freak athlete. People can't do what Cam Newton can do. So you kind of throw him to the side. And then you look at an Andy Dalton, who is a mini Andrew Luck. No one would even put them in the same conversation or sentence. But if you see that Andy Dalton can take a team to the first round of the playoffs, why can't Andrew Luck, who's been anointed as the chosen one, why can't he do it? So that being the case, and and if you're gonna commit all that money to Andrew Luck, just put the ball in his hands, say, Peyton, thank you very much, and
send him on his way. You want Andrew to learn from Peyton? Because I don't think there's any other quarterback I'd want teaching my first-round quarterback more than Peyton Manning. But and if I have to take the salary cap hit to go through a year or two with the problem, that's a good problem to have.
But you see, but I think that's where this past year has shown that rookies can play. Quarterbacks can play. I think if it was 2 years ago, even Sam Bradford had a pretty good freshman campaign in the NFL, and then last year he was sidelined by a lot of injuries. Before then, the talk was, hey, draft a good quarterback, let him sit on the bench for 2 or 3 years and learn from their predecessor. But now, these guys have proven you can win today. So if you can win today, you put Andrew Luck in there. And the best teacher will be putting them on the field as opposed to learning from Peyton Manning through osmosis.
Well, I think you're right, maybe in this situation more so than any other one, because you got new coaching staff coming in. So it's not the same old stuff anyway. And Peyton isn't going to even necessarily know that stuff to teach him that way. So I think that is a big factor in this thing. And I unfortunately do think that Peyton Manning is going to end up somewhere else. But it's just one of those dudes where it's like he has such a history there. He's become the face of the horseshoe. And that's why I feel like they should try to make an effort to keep him. Because if he's not going to play that much more, or if he is contemplating retirement, it'd be nice for him to probably retire as a Colt instead of having that last year somewhere else like we've seen with Joe Montana and some other guys, where it's kind of like that part of him you just don't really want to remember.
See, it's interesting you brought up Joe Montana. If Joe Montana can don a different uniform, Peyton Manning can.
I'm not saying he can't. I'm just saying I don't want to see it. And I'd rather see it done well if he doesn't, which I think he will, because Peyton Manning's done almost everything well in his career so far, including those sweet Oreo commercials with his brother.
I prefer the Williams sisters, but that's just me.
Huh? To each their own. Last few minutes, I just want to mention a big shout out to the Red Wings. 21 straight, NHL record, 21 straight wins at home. Impressive. Yes or no?
Absolutely impressive. I mean, I know that part of the streak's a little skewed because there's overtime shootouts, things of that nature, where before you could tie. So I don't know what the statistics are, but in theory, a tie could have broken a winning streak. But 21 games is 21 games is 21 games.
Yeah.
And especially when a goalie can have a bad night, or a goalie can stand on his proverbial head for the opponent and shut a team out or hold them to one goal, that is really impressive. But what's scary is, too, for the rest of the NHL is it seems like there may only be 1 or 2 teams capable of catching Detroit for home ice advantage throughout the playoffs. One's the New York Rangers, who defeated the Boston Bruins last night 3-0. Shameless plug for the Rangers.
And speaking of goalies standing on their head, Hendrik Lundqvist used the back of his head to make a save last night.
Right, yeah. Everyone's talking about it as possibly a save of the year. And the other team might be the Vancouver Canucks. But if Detroit gets home ice, I mean, they'll probably be a prohibited favorite to, march their way to another Stanley Cup.
Yeah, the Wings are looking strong right now. You don't win that many games at home sometimes in a season, let alone in a row. And that is 21 points times 2. Well, that's 42 points. So they're pretty much running things over there in the West. And you don't want to have to go play there, and that's the way it's going to be. If you want to win the West, you got to go through Hockey Town. And what better town to have to go through?
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know. I mean, I have never seen a game there live, but I'd like to. I have been to Chicago. I have been to Montreal, 2 great NHL cities that really back their team, and I feel like I haven't even been, but I would recommend that people go to Detroit and take in the atmosphere there, because I'm assuming it's much like Montreal and Chicago.
Maybe you could see your brother Prince Fielder there as well.
That's right. I am the white Prince Fielder, as once dubbed by a fan. I also wanted to mention real quick the passing of Whitney Houston. She had a lot of parallels going on into sports. Everybody remembers, of course, her singing the Super Bowl national anthem at the one in 25, the Giants and Bills. Part of that whole classic Super Bowl. I think if you had to show somebody one Super Bowl to get them interested in football, that might be the one, because from from beginning to halftime show all the way down to the bitter end, that was a pretty good one all the way through, and it started with Whitney and a very memorable national anthem. But I'll always remember her song from being played, the one shining moment, or not shining moment, but One Moment in Time.
One Moment in Time. For the Olympics.
When Cal Ripken, when he broke Lou Gehrig's record of games in a row, which I think will never be beat. That was the song that played as he went around and said hello to all the fans there. So, God bless Whitney. She did some good work and paralleled into sports, and a lot of memorable moments through her song that I'll always remember.
Touching. Yeah. I didn't know you were that sensitive.
Yeah, I got some sensitive days. It's Valentine's Day game. It comes out, and real men are wearing pink. So what are you gonna do? We're out of here for another week. We'll do it again next week, you think?
We will. We'll do it again.
All right. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next week.